Hi, I'm Erica Lemke from the University of Missouri, and today I'm pleased to talk to you about our project, Project STAIR, an algebraic readiness project to examine the use of professional development in data-based individualization with middle school mathematics teachers. By the end of the session, we hope you'll understand more about DBI and critical features, including assessment and intervention strategies, and we'll be discussing implications and next steps. I'm here today as a representative for Project STAIR, but my colleagues have been, of course, very involved in this project. Dr. Sarah Powell from University of Texas and Dr. Leanne Ketterlin-Geller from Southern Methodist University. Project STAIR, funded by the Office of Special Education Programs, is a model demonstration project. We're in our final year of funding, and again, as I mentioned, 3 sites involved in this work. So let me tell you more about Project STAIR, supporting teaching of algebra individual readiness. Project STAIR is meant to provide an intensive intervention process to middle school students who are struggling in mathematics. The goal of Project STAIR is to help teachers who have students at risk to help them prepare for Algebra 1. Project STAIR relies on a data-based individualization model, and in that DBI model, we want systematic processes, a reliance on data that will help teachers to individualize instruction. We use the DBI model that's from the National Center on Intensive Intervention, or NCII, which you can see depicted here, and there are 2 primary components: assessment and instruction. The key components of that DBI model include a validated Tier 2 support program that's already in place, progress monitoring, including goal setting, frequent assessment, utilizing decision rules in database decision making, diagnostic data that's collected and applied to determine what skills are not successful for a particular student, and then instructional changes that are based on the weekly progress monitoring data that's collected. Finally, this cycle of DBI is continued, determining if students are responsive or not responsive to the intervention that's being provided. DBI has been more common at the elementary level, but this particular project, we're using it in middle school mathematics. So here's that model again, and let's look at what it looks like on the teacher side. On the left-hand side of this slide, you see what it looks like for the students. On the right-hand side, we see what it looks like for teachers. So when we're providing professional development, first we're thinking of intensive information or more detailed information that we can provide to some teachers. But also, there may be teachers who need just a sort of refined set of data, who may not need quite as much information, or may need booster sessions. And for that, we call this part our STAIR tailored information. So within this model, on the left-hand side, we're seeing, again, that model for students. On the right-hand side, we're thinking about what does this model look like in terms of teacher professional development. Instead of diagnostic data for our teachers, we're using coaching to help really target their particular needs. So for our project, Project STAIR, we provide first DBI, intensive professional development. We help teachers and work with teachers to determine students that might be eligible for DBI. We work with teachers to collect some progress monitoring data and diagnostic data. And then we go back in and teach teachers a little bit more about data utilization and intervention design. And finally, coaches work with teachers to help interpret data, to change instruction as part of that tailored PD. I mentioned assessments. We have diagnostic assessments that are part of the Diagnostic Online Math Assessment, or DOMA. And you can see some examples of those represented here. There are some examples of those assessments on the previous slide. We also use progress monitoring in algebra, those algebra readiness progress measures, including proportional reasoning, quantity discrimination. So students are asked to complete these computerized assessments weekly. That data is graphed for teachers, and they look at and utilize the data using decision rules as prompted by their coaches to really take a look at what's working well for a student and also what's not working. From that, adjustments are made in instruction, instruction might be changed, or an intervention might be implemented. What types of interventions are we using? We're using those evidence-based strategies or techniques in middle school mathematics. So we have an initial instructional platform, including items like explicit instruction, multiple representations, precise language, but also fluency building, problem solving, and motivation. And as we look down through these particular components, we're thinking about those common or sort of key pieces, including explicit instruction, multiple representations. You can see those kind of further drilled down in this particular slide, where on the left-hand side we see those common components of explicit instruction. On the right-hand side, that concrete, abstract, pictorial, sometimes we say concrete, representational, abstract, as part of multiple representations. So we're using these common evidence-based strategies to help support teachers in supporting their students at risk. Then we're thinking about, if those particular strategies are not working for students, how can we make adaptations? For instance, intensifying instruction through some of these intensification strategies, and these might look familiar to you. This is part of the taxonomy of intensification, Amelia Malone, Lynn Fuchs's work around intensification. And our tailored approach, following some initial core professional development, some follow-up tailored professional development, is provided through YouTube videos that we've recorded in our Lightboard studio. We have over 100 tailored PD videos that really take you into some of those mathematical concepts, that take you into areas like equity in mathematics. And in a minute, I'll give you more details about how you can access those videos on YouTube. So our pilot study was conducted in our first couple of years in the project. You can read more about the details of this pilot study in a recent article we published in Studies in Educational Evaluation. The research questions for the project revolved around how participation in the project might impact teachers' perception of school-level culture and climate for DBI, how it might impact teachers' ratings of importance, understanding, confidence, frequency of DBI content, instructional and assessment practices, and then also what the student level effects were following teacher participation. In this pilot study year, we had 22 teachers. Schools were across Texas and Missouri, and from those teachers, we had 56 students who worked with those teachers. All of these students were in need of intensive intervention in mathematics. We used both teacher and student measures. The teacher measures included surveys on self-efficacy, instructional practices. Student measures included some of those measures I showed you before, the algebra readiness progress measure, the diagnostic online math assessment, and also a standardized measure, the Iowa algebra test. So what were some of our outcomes? One significant outcome was with respect to culture and climate, the impact on culture and climate. The difference between pre and post-test was significant for teachers who were participating in our DBI professional development. Also, we didn't see necessarily significant changes, but we did see important differences in pre to post assessment practices in terms of teachers' ratings of importance, understanding, confidence, and frequency. While changes were not significant across some of these survey items, it was important that we were examining the pre to post test potential differences. These particular questions were addressing efficacy in mathematics. Again, we need more data to support potential changes in efficacy based on involvement in our project. We did see significant changes on student outcomes in terms of some of the algebra readiness measures, all of the number properties, quantity discrim, proportional reasoning. We also saw some pretty significant effects, particularly on quantity discrimination. On our standardized measure, the Iowa, we did not see significant changes from pre to post. So teachers, as a result of participation in STAIR during our pilot study, showed significant increases in their perceptions of culture and climate at their school, significant growth in understanding of and perceptions of importance, confidence in using assessment data. Unfortunately, no significant differences in perceptions and use of DBI content, instructional practices, or self-efficacy. So really kind of some mixed findings around those teacher results. For students, we did see that we saw some positive changes in improving outcomes on proximal measures and diagnostic measures, but not that distal standardized measure. As we think about moving forward for the future, we need to continue to think about strategies for implementation. So do we need more direct measures, for instance, of things like, direct measures of multiple representations, direct measures of fluency, for instance. Do we need additional strategies to support teachers' implementation of DBI? How can we build confidence in DBI, for instance, through targeting DBI support more explicitly during coaching? Perhaps we need more sensitive measures of how teachers might be improving in DBI. One of the further implications for practice is to continue to consider how we support teachers as they move from this pandemic and move back into in-person learning in some cases. There may be, or likely be continued achievement crises. And so how do we support teachers with our DBI framework? In addition, we continue to think about how do we use that professional development to improve some of those teacher outcomes. As we move into future steps, we plan to move into 21-22 with full implementation. We're going to implement a randomized control trial with intensified professional development and more structured coaching sessions to really try to do a final great test using that RCT design. Just some kind of final reflections as we move into our final year of this project. It's really important that we've tried out this DBI model in middle school mathematics. It's an area that there was definite need. However, it's been difficult to sustain this with teachers. We are doing some sustainability follow-ups in these years after implementation. So, a question remains about how to make this more easy and accessible. And we want to continue to help think through how we teach for transfer, how we communicate that to our teachers. So here's a QR code. If you're interested in more of our videos, you can certainly just search Project Stair on YouTube or use the QR code to go directly to that YouTube channel. So I want to thank you again. I know this looks a little messy here, but these are all of the folks who support our work, including the Meadows Center, NCII, and encourage you to follow us also on Twitter using @ProjectStair. So I appreciate your time and thank you again for the opportunity to present.